On the far side of my son John's barn, down past Katie's garden rows, there is a pond about the size of a farmhouse parlor. There is no pump on it, no filter, no cord, and no bag of fish food anywhere on this farm. Nobody has drained it or scrubbed it in 50 years, and every year that little patch of water hands this family hundreds of duck eggs, a summer of bluegill dinners, spring greens, and a wheelbarrow load of the richest garden fertilizer I have ever seen, free of charge. Families have been fed this way for about 5,000 years, but walk into a pond store today and a fellow will sell you $3,000 of pumps, filters, and chemicals to keep a puddle half that size from turning green, and it turns green anyway. So today I'm going to show you the whole system, start to finish, the way my daddy, my grandfather, ran it before me. And stay with me to the end, because whether a pond like this feeds you for 50 years or turns into a stinking green mess, by August comes down to one thing the old folks did on purpose, a thing that looks to modern eyes like plain laziness. Once you hear the why behind it, you will never look at a tidy pond the same way again. I'm David Yoder. I'm 63 years old. I'm Old Order Amish, and my family has worked the same Lancaster County soil for better than 200 years. I was raised in these fields by my daddy, and Katie and I raised 8 children and 31 grandchildren on what this ground and this water gave us. Our son John runs the farm now, so I finally have time to sit on this porch and tell you how we do things. Now think about your last trip through the grocery store for a minute. Eggs cost whatever the week decides. A small package of fish raised in a pen across an ocean costs more than a whole chicken used to. And out in the garden aisle, the fertilizer, the bug spray, the pond chemicals, every last bag and jug empties itself by fall and sends you back for another. Everything runs out, and friends, everything runs out on purpose. Meanwhile, this pond behind the barn sits quietly turning sunlight and rain into protein, eggs, greens, and fertilizer year after year after year, and asks for almost nothing back. So why does nobody teach it anymore? You will hear it said that this system was banned, and I want to talk straight with you about that word, the same as I would over the fence. No law was ever passed against a farm pond, but in a good many towns and subdivisions today, the rulebook will not let you keep 2 ducks, and some will not let you dig 4 feet of water on your own land without permission papers first. So have a word with your township before you ever pick up a shovel. That part is real. The bigger reason is quieter than any ban, though. There has never been a single dollar in teaching a pond to feed itself. No refills, no filters, no repeat sale. Nobody had to outlaw it. There was simply no money in teaching it, and one quiet generation at a time, it slipped away. Keep that lazy-looking thing from the start in your pocket while we work, because every piece of this system stands or falls on it, and I promise you we will get there. Now, everything I am showing you today comes off one page of a manual Katie and I put together called the Amish Family Manual, because these old methods were never written down anywhere, and somebody ought to. It is the plain household book of what our families have run for 200 years. The heat, the water, the pantry, the garden, the cleaning, and the quiet money habits underneath it all, written out step by step with the materials and the dollar amounts. It is not a book about becoming Amish. It is a book about keeping more of what you earn. Taken together, those pages can keep up to $6,000 a year home, where it belongs. Right now, it is $17, marked down from $47. $17 once against bills that come back every month. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up, give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you are watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time, there is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. All right, friends, back down to the water, because the next part is the part you can walk outside and start this very season. Let me show you what this pond actually is first, because it is easy to look at water and see a decoration. On a plain farm, the pond is a working member of the place, same as the milk cow or the draft team, and it hands you 5 different things. First, fish, bluegill mostly, sweet white meat that goes from the water to Katie's cast iron skillet in under an hour. Second, eggs, rich brown duck eggs, the kind bakers whisper about, gathered from a little duck house on the bank every morning. Third, greens, cattail shoots in the spring, and a root the old folks called duck potato in the fall. I will introduce you to both. Fourth, fertilizer. The black mud off the pond bottom is the finest dressing a garden bed ever had, and I will show you the October day we harvest it. And fifth, water itself. Watering cans for the tomatoes in a dry August, water for the stock, and in Deati's day, the water that stood ready if ever the barn caught fire. There is a 6th gift besides, and it runs exactly backwards from everything you have heard. I will prove that one to you in a few minutes. Now, none of this is my invention, and truth be told, none of it is even Amish. Chinese farmers were raising carp beside their rice fields about 5,000 years ago. The monks in the old country dug fish ponds outside the monastery walls so there would be food on the table clear through winter. And in my Deati's young days, the government itself sent men out to help American farmers stake and dig these ponds. By the time I was born, there were better than 2 million farm ponds in this country. Near every farm had one. Ours still does. We Amish don't have secrets. We have memories. So if the farm pond was everywhere and it worked, where did it all go? Pay close attention to this next part because it explains every shelf in the pond store. Somewhere between Deati's time and ours, the farm pond got replaced by the water feature. Walk that pond aisle today and study it a minute. Electric pumps, ultraviolet filters, test strips in little jars, algae killer by the jug, and fish food in bags that cost more than layer feed. And notice something about that shelf. Every item on it does a job the old pond once did for itself. The filter does what the shelf plants did. The chemical does what the balance did. The food bag does what the bugs did. They took one living system apart and sold it back to us in pieces, the way a man might part out a perfectly good buggy. And pieces wear out, which is the whole point of pieces. A pond that feeds itself makes a terrible customer, terrible business, fine farming. Nobody sat in a room and planned the forgetting, friends. It just pays better this way, and what pays gets advertised, and what gets advertised gets remembered. The old pond never had an advertisement. It only had results. Enough about the store. Let us go dig a hole. And take heart, because this is the easiest digging you will ever do, on account of the pond does most of its work after the shovel is put away. First, walk your land after a good rain and watch where the water wants to gather. That low spot has already voted. That is your pond. Just keep it out of the direct wash from the barnyard or the driveway, because you want clean rain, not oily runoff. Next, count your sunlight. The pond wants 6 hours of direct sun a day. 6 hours at the least, because every plant in this system eats light for a living. Now, before one shovelful moves, do 2 things. Have your utility lines marked, which costs you nothing and can save your life. And have that word with your township about ponds and ducks, so you know your own ground rules going in. Then take a garden hose and lay your shape out on the grass. For a family starting out, 15 feet by 20 feet is plenty. 15 by 20, about the size of a big farmhouse kitchen. My cousins out in Holmes County, Ohio, run a 1/4-acre pond, but they are feeding 3 households off it. Dig it like a soup bowl with a ledge around the rim. All the way around, cut a shelf about 2 feet wide. Make that shelf 12 to 18 inches deep and no deeper. 12 to 18 inches. Mark my words on that shelf, because by the end of this video, you will know it is the most valuable ground on your whole place. From the shelf, slope on down toward the middle. In the middle, dig your deep hole. 4 feet deep is the floor. 6 feet is better if your back and your water table allow it. In a little while, I will show you exactly why that deep spot decides whether your fish greet you alive in April. Now, the bottom. Reach down and squeeze a fist of your subsoil. If it holds together like bread dough, you have clay, and clay was the only pond liner anybody needed for 5,000 years. Pack it while it is damp, in layers about 4 inches thick with your boots and a hand tamper. Go slow with it. A pond is never in a hurry, and neither are you. If your soil crumbles apart like cake instead, you have sandy ground, and you should buy one rubber pond liner from the farm store and be done with the worry. It will run you a couple $100 one time. A liner bought once is still plenty simple, and it beats watching your water walk off every August. Fill it with rain if the season allows. If you start it with town water, fill it up and let it rest 1 full week before anything alive goes in. 1 full week so the chlorine can breathe off into the air. And friends, one more thing, from a grandfather of 31. If little ones toddle around your place, put a simple fence around that water from the very first day. Water is patient, so you be more patient still. So there is your build, a low sunny spot, a shelf 2 feet wide at 12 to 18 inches, a gentle slope, a deep middle of 4 to 6 feet, packed clay or one liner, and a week of resting water. The whole is finished. Now we hire the workers. Every plant in this system is a hired hand that works for free, and late spring is hiring season once the water has warmed past 60 degrees. Start with cattails at one end of the shelf. 1 clump the size of a dinner plate is plenty, dug from any wet ditch with the landowner's blessing, roots and mud and all. Set it in the shelf mud and step it in firm. It will spread on its own from there. And come next spring, the young shoots peel and cook up like something between a cucumber and a leek. My mom, my mother, fried them in butter. Next to the cattails, set arrowhead. The old folks called it duck potato, and the name is honest because down in the mud it grows a tuber that roasts like a small potato, and the ducks will race you to it. Out in the deep water, sink 1 water lily, planted in a crate of heavy soil with gravel over the top. Those pads are working parasols. Shade keeps summer water cool. Cool water holds more air, and your fish breathe that air. Last of all, fetch a coffee can of duckweed from any old farm pond and pour it on the surface. It looks like green dust floating there. It doubles itself about every 2 days in high summer, and dried out, it runs close to 40% protein. The ducks graze it the way Max and Duke graze clover. And here is your one planting rule to carry. By the middle of July, green should cover about half of your water, half, not a quarter. Lily pads, duckweed, and shelf plants all count toward that half. Hold on to that picture of green, half-wild water, because it sits at the very heart of the promise I made you at the start. So that is the planting. Cattails and arrowhead on the shelf, 1 lily in the deep, a can of duckweed on top, and half the water wearing green by July. Give those plants 2 or 3 weeks to settle in before any fish arrive, because those quiet weeks are when the water bugs move in, and the bugs are the feed bill you will never pay. Then comes my favorite errand of the spring. Out here in farm country, the hatchery truck parks at the feed mill a few Saturdays every year, and you carry your fish home swimming in a bag like a prize from the county fair. 1 call to any farm pond hatchery will get you the dates. For a 15 by 20 pond, start with 1 dozen bluegill, 12 fish. I know that sounds lonesome in all that water, but bluegill multiply like rabbits that learn to swim, and an overstocked pond is the #1 beginner funeral in this whole business. 12 and not 1 more. And now comes the instruction nobody wants to believe. Do not feed them, not 1 pellet, not ever. I know the store sells the bag, and I know tossing feed feels like kindness, but every pellet becomes fish manure. Every bit of manure feeds green water, and green water is how ponds die. You planted the shelf raised the bugs, and the bugs will feed those fish better than any bag ever could. Let the pond do its own chores. Now, on bigger water, it changes some. On a 1/4 acre like my Ohio cousins keep, you add largemouth bass, about 1 bass for every 10 bluegill, and the bass keep the bluegill honest and fat. But for a starter pond, it is bluegill alone, 12 of them, and a little patience. The fish are hired. Time now to meet the foreman of this whole operation. She waddles, and she is worth her weight in eggs. 2 ducks. Before I tell you anything else about them, hear the number. 2. 10 ducks will turn a pond into a manure lagoon by June. 2 ducks turn it into an engine. Katie's breed is the khaki Campbell, a plain brown duck that lays close to 300 eggs a year. 300 from 1 duck. 2 hens will keep a family in eggs and then some, and you need no drake at all unless you are after ducklings. Now watch what this one animal does for the whole system. Her droppings are the pond's slow fertilizer, feeding the tiny green life in the water, and that tiny life raises the bugs, and the bugs raise your bluegill. She grazes the duckweed down so it never smothers the surface. She spends an hour every evening patrolling Katie's garden rows, eating slugs and beetles like candy. And all day long she noses that shallow shelf with her bill, stirring the mud and keeping it alive. 1 plain duck, 4 jobs, and breakfast on top of it. House her simply. A small wooden duck house up on the bank, dry straw inside, and the door gets shut every single night. Every night, friends, no exceptions, because the raccoon and the fox keep better hours than any alarm clock. And if you have never eaten a duck egg, they run half again the size of a hen's egg, with a yolk like an August sun, and bakers pay $6 to $8 a dozen for them at the farmer's market. Katie's rule on that is a simple one. Sell the extras, never the habit. Now, I can hear what half of you are thinking out there on your porches, and it whines when it flies. Let me put that worry to bed for good. Everybody's sister-in-law will warn you that a pond breeds mosquitoes. Friends, the truth runs exactly backwards. A mosquito needs still, fishless water, a few quiet days of it, to raise her young. Your bird bath qualifies, so does the clogged gutter, and so does the saucer under every flower pot on the porch. But a stocked pond is the one water in the whole neighborhood where every larva that hatches gets eaten before supper, because to a bluegill, mosquito young are popcorn. The old farm pond was the mosquito trap for the whole homestead, drawing them in off the fields and feeding them straight to the fish. You would think somebody at the pond store might mention that. Nobody ever does. So the pond is dug, planted, stocked, and staffed. Now walk 1 full year beside it with me, season by season, because the year is where this system truly shows off. Spring is for planting and stocking, everything we just walked through, plus 1 small chore. Rake the winter's leaves, and windfall sticks off the shelf before the water warms, so the season starts out lean. Summer is the season of taking eggs from the duck house every morning. Cattail shoots early on, cut with a kitchen knife just below the water line, and once a week skim a 5-gallon bucket of duckweed off the surface and carry it to the chickens or the compost pile. That bucket looks like a chore, but it is secretly the relief valve of the whole pond, because every bucket of duckweed you carry away is a bucket of richness that can never turn into green water. In a dry spell, dip your watering cans right off the shelf, and your tomatoes will take warm pond water over cold hose water every day of the week. Fall is my favorite because fall is harvest, and this pond gives 2 harvests. The first one comes with cane poles and grandchildren. Take a good mess of bluegill for the skillet, and friends, take plenty. Take more than feels polite. A pond that never gets fished fills up with 1,000 stunted runts fighting over the same bugs, while a pond that gets fished hard grows fat, hand-sized bluegill year after year. Hard fishing is part of the caretaking, strange as that may sound. The second fall harvest is the one nobody counts. Every October I take a long-handled shovel and scoop 6 or 8 buckets of black mud off the edge of the pond bottom, and I wheel it straight to Katie's garden beds. That muck is last year's leaves and duck droppings and pond life, all composted underwater into a dressing richer than anything in a bag. Garden centers sell compost for $40 a yard that cannot hold a candle to it. 6 or 8 buckets spread a couple inches thick, and the garden pays the pond's rent for another year. And then winter, when the pond earns its keep by doing almost nothing. Here is the wonder I promised you back when we dug that deep hole. The good Lord gave water one peculiar habit. Water is at its very heaviest at 39 degrees, a few degrees above freezing. So all winter long, that heavier 39-degree water sinks down into your deep hole and lies there like a quilt, and your bluegill lie inside it, slow and safe, while the ice roofs them over. That is the whole reason we dug 4 feet at the least, the shape of the hole and the nature of water, and not a heater or a bubbler in sight. Winter asks one chore only. If snow blankets the ice for more than a week, sweep a window of it clear so daylight can reach the plants below and keep the water breathing. And never chop at the ice over live fish, because the shock rings through the water like a dinner bell. If you ever need a hole, set a pan of hot water on the ice and let it melt its own way through. I will tell you, winter ponds raised me. When I was a boy, January meant ice harvest. Dayati would test the ice, and when it held a solid 4 inches, we cut blocks with a long cross-cut saw, and the grandsires of Max and Duke, our Belgians, pulled the sled up to the ice house. That ice kept the milk cold into August. Even frozen solid, the pond was feeding us. So there is the year. Spring you plant and stock. Summer you gather eggs and greens and carry your bucket of duckweed. Fall you fish hard and wheel the black gold to the garden. And winter you sweep the snow and let the deep hole keep your fish like money in a sock. Now let us tally what walks out of that water in 1 year. And I will count low on purpose, because low numbers are the ones you can trust. 2 hens laying close to 300 eggs apiece comes to somewhere around 50 dozen. Price them at just $5 a dozen, well under what the bakers pay, and that is $250 in eggs alone. Add a whole summer of fish dinners, and you can price wild-caught fish at your own grocery store, and do that arithmetic sitting down. Add 6 or 8 buckets of the finest compost on earth. Add the mosquito service you never had to hire, and the garden watering that never touched the well pump. Friends, that is hundreds of dollars every single year, out of a hole that cost you 1 weekend and maybe a liner. And unlike every bag and jug at the farm store, this thing gets richer with age instead of emptier. But every dollar of it, every egg and every fillet, hangs on the one thing I promised you at the very start, the lazy-looking thing. We are there now, so lean in close. Walk up to any old farm pond from Da'ati's generation, ours included, and you will notice the same thing. About a third of it looks neglected. The shallow shelf stands thick with cattails and arrowhead, drowned grass at the waterline, duckweed drifted into the corners, dragonflies stitching back and forth over the top of it all. A modern landscaper would back a trailer up to it, trim it, rake it, and have it looking like a postcard by supper. And in that one tidy afternoon, he would quietly kill the pond. Because green water, the algae that ruins ponds, is only a plant. It is the plant you did not choose, and it eats the very same dinner your chosen plants eat, the richness from the duck and the leaves and the mud. Now, every rooted plant on that messy shelf wakes up earlier in the spring than algae does. It roots deeper, it feeds faster, and it holds its ground all season long. As long as that shelf stays thick, the table gets cleared before algae ever finds a seat, and your water stays clear as well water with nobody lifting a finger. Tidy that shelf away, and all that richness has nowhere left to go but green. And then the store is glad to sell you a filter to strain the green, and a jug to kill the green, and the killed algae rots and feeds the next bloom, and around the wheel you go with your wallet open the whole ride. And while that messy third is filtering your water, it is doing 2 more jobs in the bargain. Down among those stems, this year's baby bluegill hide from their own grandfathers until they are too big to swallow, and that is where every next generation of fish comes from. And the water bugs your bluegill fatten on all summer are raised in that same thicket. So that shaggy third of the pond is the filter, and the hatchery and the feed bin, all 3 at once, for the price of leaving it be. My daddy always said the hardest work on a farm is the work you make yourself leave undone. 50 years I have watched this pond prove him right. What looks like laziness, friends, is the oldest wisdom on the place, and that is the shape of everything Katie and I put in the Amish family manual. This pond has its own page in the manual, along with every plain method we know for keeping up to $6,000 a year home, each written out with the materials and the dollar amounts. It is $17 today, marked down from $47, about the price of 2 bags of that fish food you now know better than to buy. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up, give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you are watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time. There is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. So there it is, friends. 1 low spot, a shelf and a deep hole, 4 plants, 12 bluegill, 2 ducks, and a third you leave blessedly alone, and it will feed your table for as long as you let it. Now tell me in the comments, did your grandparents do it this way too? Maybe a pond, maybe a duck yard, maybe a crock of something wonderful. I'd surely like to hear it. I read every single one. Next week, I am going to show you how the old farm wives kept eggs fresh for a whole year, with no ice box and no freezer, just a stone crock and a scoop of pickling lime. And why it works comes down to one specific thing that lime water does to an eggshell that cold never could. That's how we've always done it, friends. Live plain, live well, and God bless you now.